Want to talk about the nature of debate as an idea, um, and how I feel that there needs to be a cut-off point with debate. I'm not talking so much like in a presidential debate, for example, there is an actual cut-off point, in terms of time, in order to show fairness to both candidates. I'm talking more in general terms. I think there needs to be a point where you think, well, I've said what I'm going to say. The other person said what they're going to say, and you just have to kind of let that be what it is. This is actually worth a bit of commentary because I think it's very understated, that aspect of it. Um, so much ego is involved with this. I've been in many, many debates about a million different subjects. That doesn't mean I always jump into the debate ring. Sometimes I will think it's not worth it, but I have been in some fairly robust debates over a million different issues. Okay. I'm not even going to give examples because that would just detract from the point of this video. Because I don't want to make them about the subject themselves, but rather its nature of debate. Um, Certainly, for people who are in the public eye, politicians are the most obvious example, but also media commentators, high-profile journalists, sports pundits, business pundits, anyone who's in a sort of position of responsibility or in a high profile position, even you may even find it with musicians or actors, um, though perhaps I'd say more probably with musicians and actors, because actors, they get the script, they do the role. The debate tends to be from political activism where it exists, but um, I think perhaps more with musicians would be probably a better example because you get hear debates over how someone approaches certain music and so on. Um, so having been in many debates, sometimes they've got quite testy. I've always conscientiously tried to stay out of the gutter, but I'm not going to lie, I haven't always been a good boy. I haven't always, been absolutely polite. I've fought fire with fire, so I'm not going to lie about that. But I think that you just have to accept that at some point the other person isn't going to change their spectrum, and then you need to question, well, what is the point of it? I see debate as a way to explore our own convictions, i.e., how far are we willing to really stand up for what we believe in? Plus, and this is very important, a way of considering our position. That is to say, by allowing ourselves into a debate format, you have to listen to the other person, even if you think they're full of crap. You have to listen to them if for no other reason than to refute what they're saying. But there actually comes another aspect to this, which is that we need to be open minded enough to accept that we don't know everything and what the other person is saying might well be valid. And it may get us to rethink that. Um, and for people who have enormous ego or they have this complex where they just cannot accept that they can ever be wrong, debate would be a real challenge for them because their only interest is in trying to prove that they're right. And this is the problem I think with debate, particularly with public debate. I really dislike this idea of this person won the debate because they humiliated the other person more. We're really hung up on that. I mean, you see it all the time on the internet, and journalists really do this thing where they talk about um, person A destroys person B, person A shuts down person B. It's an American vernacular that's creeping its way into the English, British English vernacular, and I really dislike it because it's very immature. It's like a high school popularity contest. Like, oh well, this person's got more fans, so they must be right. I've always felt that some people are just very skilled and adept at arguing their case. It doesn't necessarily mean they are right. It just means that they're more adept at convincing people that they're right. The other person may actually have valid arguments, but they're just not constructing them well. Um, so that's something I dislike sometimes in the public arena when we get this idea of winning debates. Now, I'm not naive. In a political context, that does matter because it's about persuading voters, right? So, in a prime ministerial debate or a presidential debate, that obviously matters because winning it there isn't just about ego, it's about convincing the electorate that your policies are better than your opponent's policies and your ideas are better than your opponent's ideas. But this doesn't even just apply to prominent people. It can apply to the average person. You know, who you could get into debate about any subject online. We all do it from time to time. I certainly have done it quite a bit. And if you really object to what the other person's saying, you will either want to ignore them or you'll want to really robustly argue your case. Very, very few people have the ability to say, oh, well, maybe I'm wrong, I'll reconsider that. The truth is, there is a bit of ego going on with most people, myself included. Um, and you just look at what the other person's saying and you want to just prove them wrong. So it's difficult to get away from that, but I think we have to try. Um, this is why it's very important not to get into ad hominem attacks or personal slights. As soon as someone starts doing that, um, I think they kind of lose credibility. Um, and I think that that just brings the debate to the gutter because then the other person is likely to be on the defensive. Now, having said that, I'm not naive. If someone's coming out with a position that's so outrageous, it's saying, "Oh, just stay civil," can be a bit, ridiculous because emotions will be raised. And anyone that says they never get worked up about any subject, I believe, are not telling the truth. Most people, push come to shove, have um, have strong feelings on at least something. Even if you don't consider yourself particularly political, you might have strong feelings on music taste or film taste. So what I'm really driving at with this is that people, firstly, I don't think anyone has the right to bully others into debate. That is to say, sometimes I see this mentality of, oh, you're running away from this, or you have to prove your point, or you have to argue your case. I see no dishonor in saying, well, we're clearly not going to agree. Goodbye, speak to you later, or never again. I don't think that's necessarily dishonorable. It could be actually avoiding just getting into a situation where you're just mudslinging. There's another aspect, even mature debates, that is where you're just exchanging important ideas. At some point, you have to say, "Well, we've covered this. It's been done. We've went through it." And it could be physically tiring. Another thing I don't recommend is alcohol in debate. I've been in situations now, where I was going to say naively, but yeah, the thing about being merry is it kind of puts you off guard and it makes you a bit relaxed and not always in a good way. And I've been in situations where it's just went on all night, literally. The subject doesn't even matter. It just goes on and on and on because people are, boosted up by the booze and they just want to prove themselves right and they want to prove the other person wrong. And I think we would all do well to take egos out of it a little bit. I'm not saying we all have to go in and not believe in what we're saying or not stand up for our convictions, but I think you can get to a point where you say, actually, yeah, What's said is said, that's all we can say, and there's nothing more to add to that. And you have to consider, am I really trying to change the other person's point of view here? Am I trying to vindicate myself? Am I trying to, you know, what's the purpose of it? If your purpose is to share ideas, to try and get the other person to reconsider, okay, but then you need to be prepared to do that yourself. And I'm talking in third person here. I include myself with this. Sometimes with adult debate, you can maybe still disagree, but perhaps reflect on things, and that could be a benefit from it. But basically, summed up, I think there just comes a point when you have to accept what's said is you can't take it any further. And a lot of people come back and think, oh, I could have said that, I could have said this. In all likelihood, the other person's thinking the same thing. What we can't do is get hung up on that because you have to remember the other person, or even if it's more than one person, they're a microcosm, that they're a small fraction of the human population. So the fact that you haven't convinced them or they think you're X, Y, and Z, or you could have come back strong to refute a point they made, ultimately, does it really, really matter? Unless you're standing for office, does it really, really matter? And I think these are things that people need to consider. So next time you're in a debate, maybe just consider that. Consider what am I doing here? Am I just trying to prove myself right? Am I trying to prove the other person wrong? Am I trying to listen to them? What is it? Um, I've been in debate. I mean, this is particularly the case online. You get into long debates, and then you see that notification. This person's responded, and you get, well, I certainly get this thing. Okay, now I need to respond. But there comes a point when someone is going to have the last word, and you have to just let that be. It doesn't mean that they've won. It might just mean, I mean, the last debate I've come out of, as an example, I know the guys just sent a reply to my last reply. Now, I could go back and, counter that, and then what would happen? He would need to counter that, and then I'd need to counter that, and it would just never end. This is the thing. You need to choose at which point you cut it off for yourself, and there's no dishonor in that. There's nothing cowardly about saying, okay, well, we've had it out, that's it. And incidentally, I don't think there's anything cowardly with sometimes avoiding it altogether. If, for example, you feel that a strong difference of opinion could lead to damage to a friendship and you value that friendship or you value that relationship, then avoiding it might be practical. And I will cite just one example with this. My Chinese friends, I never talk to them or very rarely talk to them about my very strong views on the CCP, Chinese Communist Party. I know just from little flickerings I've seen from their posts and so on, they're not necessarily pro CCP, but they're pretty nationalistic, some of them. And I know we could get into a very testy exchange if we went there. So I choose not to because I like the other side. I like our friendship and I don't want to ruin that. So I also think there's nothing wrong with that. Wanting to avoid debate for the sake of friendship. Some people just they cannot let it rest. They just want to go on and on and on. So I don't agree with bullying people into it, like pressuring them to defend their position or whatever. If you think they're wrong, say it. Say, well, I think you're wrong about this. But you can't bully people. You can't pressure them in saying, oh, you have to defend your position, otherwise you're running away. If they've said something insulting, that's a different matter. But I think we need to approach this subject with the idea of debate generally, just with practicality, if I could put it that way. That's maybe the best word for it, practicality. Let me know your thoughts.